Hey, welcome to the Play Skillfully podcast. I am so excited that you are here for this special recording. Today we have, I'm going to say the legendary Andy Harkness joining us. And you might or might not know Andy. I'm just really learning about all of his work. But Andy is an artist, an animator, has been doing things for a really long time, even though he doesn't look old enough to be doing all the things he's done. He worked for Disney for 25 years, has worked on amazing projects like Moana, which is one of our family favorites. And is Wreck-It Ralph really one of the ones you've done too? Oh my gosh, we just watched that with our grandkids. So Andy, in addition, has just a beautiful way to illustrate books. I first learned about Andy from Kisses from Space from my dear friend Carrie Vosick. When she first showed me Andy's illustrations, literally, Andy, took my breath away when I saw your work. And then I discovered Wolf Boy, which, oh my gosh, buying for my grandkids. And now you have a new book that we're going to talk about that just seems delightful. I have already pre-ordered it, and it is called Find the Sun. So welcome, Andy Harkness.
Kathy, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I am so excited because art, listen, I'm the girl that draws stick figures. If you find my art from when I was young, it is going to be a tree with a house. And if any people are there, they're stick figures. So that's unfortunately my giftedness in the area of art. However, as a child development specialist, I am passionate about children discovering art in that process, open-ended way. So I want to go back to your childhood. And I want to learn what your childhood looked like when it came to art. Do you mind sharing a little bit about how that story started?
Not at all. Gosh, I remember being about 3 or 4 years old and painting a little abstract painting in preschool, and the teacher being very excited about it. And I didn't think anything was special about it at all. But she loved it, and my mom was so happy. Of course, my mom was happy about it, and that enthusiasm, I think, from my mom, from the teacher, it really sparked something in me. That I can bring joy or happiness through art, even at that age. And I think that's really my first memory, but I always was sketching, always doodling. And I remember in second grade, it was kind of a big moment for me. I think we had this assignment in second grade to write a little story and then illustrate some pictures that goes along with it. And I wanted to do a caveman with I think it was a stegosaurus or something. I can't remember exactly. I remember there was a spark. I still have that feeling now if I'm doing art. I still have that same feeling. It was something that I connected to in my soul. I can't explain. And I loved it. I couldn't stop drawing this book way past when it was due. I was determined. I spent so much time in the school library, looking at books. And my dream really was to be a children's book illustrator. That's always been my dream since 7 years old.
That is so beautiful. Well, it's what I always tell parents. It's like, in fact, I just did a TikTok about it yesterday about Jane Goodall. She talks about her first time she found earthworms at 18 months, and that her mother's reaction was not that of freaking out and fear because she had them in her bed. Her mother got curious with her. And, I feel so passionate about parents supporting young children and watching them and seeing where their passions are, like what that giftedness already is or that passion is. Did you find that with your parents? Did they support that from an early age?
Yes, 100%. My mom started off as a microbiologist, and now she's a wine enologist. She tastes wine for a living. But so
Rough job.
rough job. And my dad was a veterinarian, and
Okay.
so both scientists, and both our house and they loved to travel. So our house was always filled with interesting books on science and history. And my dad he really wanted us to learn about the world. So we had this interest and passion in things early on. Absolutely, that fed into everything that I do, especially as being, what I'm now doing is production designing for animated movies. And I've art directed, but part of that job is to dive deep into subjects. And I'm really am a nerd. I love researching things and going deep. And I think that comes from my parents.
That's beautiful. And that's evident in your work. Again, as we talked before I hit record about Moana, I mean, that's so evident that you just hit it right on the head. That was such a lovely I mean, all of the works that I think you've been involved in have been spectacular, but that one in particular struck me. So, what about your like when you were a child, did you have a space in your home where you could just create without worry? Was it restricted to your bedroom or the library, or could you just piddle around? And what did that look like?
My room was an absolute mess, and I'm really grateful now. I think I've got 2 sons, and we're always
Okay.
like, "Clean your room, clean your room, clean your room," but my parents kind of let my room be what it was for whatever
Yeah.
reason they did, and I actually cleared a path from the door to my bed. It wasn't junky, but it just had I had still life set up where I was painting, and I had little experiments of science. I love to collect butterflies and bugs and insects, so I had like a little zoo in
Yeah.
my room of insects, and it was wild. Like, so that was what my room was like, and that I think that was my creating. I didn't really have much of an art desk. What I did is I kneeled at the side of my bed, and I had my watercolors and paper on top of my bed, and I just painted.
Okay.
I slept on the floor on a sleeping bag with a space heater next to me. I was
That is
a little
so
odd.
funny.
I was a little odd, but, that's they let me kind of explore that and just be that. Now I'm very organized with everything I do, but
Yes.
it's just kind of I wonder if actually, I know I don't have the same patience my parents had with me.
That's
I
so
have to remember that.
interesting. Yeah. Did you fall in love with a particular art style? Were you doing you said watercolors, you said sketching. Now, I know you do a lot of clay. So, where did all that come about and what was your passion when you were little and how did it change if it has?
Oh, it has, yeah. I love the process of learning
Okay.
everything. So I've gone from, first it was pencil and I wanted to get as realistic as I possibly could. And I was studying my uncle's a photographer. I used to copy his photos.
Oh,
And
that's
then one
cool.
day he said, "Andy, you need to be drawing from life, not my photos, draw from life." So I started doing that. And then I got into watercolor. And basically, long story short, I get really excited about learning something new. And then I get to a place where I'm not going to say I mastered it, but I feel I've done about as good as I can before it starts to get a little boring to me. And then I move on to the next thing. For my career now, that is the best way to be actually, because every movie has to look different depending on what the director
Right.
wants, the vision. So, and I can easily switch between styles. But when I was looking at colleges to go to, I visited New York before high school ended, went to a school called Cooper Union in New York City. And the feedback I got from them was, "Andy, your stuff is fantastic, but we're really looking for artists that have more of a refined style that really," and in my mind, my 18-year-old stubborn mind, I thought, gosh, Picasso didn't have a style at 18. He was a you have to have life
Right.
experiences to have, we express art visually is an expression of our life and our experiences and the highs and lows and everything. And I was only 18 at that point. So I even
Right.
knew then that was a strange thing. But
Yeah.
but that's kind of me. I've just been the minute I learn one thing, I want to try the next, and I love the adventure of it. But one thing
Okay.
that remains the same is the feeling that I want the illustrations to evoke, whether it's done in clay, watercolor, pencil. I want there to be a certain mystery, and I want kids to be able to look at these pages like I looked at books as a kid and just got lost, and wanted to learn more. So that's always my goal, regardless of the medium.
I love that so much. I have 3 children's books in my brain that I am desperate to get out, and one of the scariest part is the illustration. Like, how do you get it I mean, couldn't do it, but I mean, I think how would it look? How would it be told? The illustrations I feel are, in my opinion, with young kids are probably more important than the words. I mean, I was looking through your book, Wolf Boy, and I mean, just the way that you placed him, like where you placed him in different areas in the book, a little tiny and he's giant and his emotion. I mean, I didn't even have to read the words and I was understanding the story. And that's what I think is so powerful about illustration and Kisses from Space. The way that, again, I mentioned earlier when Carrie first sent me the mama dinosaur that you did, I have chills saying it now. I had full body chills. Like you captured her so beautifully that I knew that once it was with the words, it was gonna be magic, and it was, but man, your illustrations they're moving, they're moving, so let's talk about Find the Sun for a minute. Of course, the book is not out, so I haven't seen it, but I did see on your Instagram where you said you kinda woke up and had this idea. I'm assuming that's the book. You didn't name the book in that post, but it looks similar, so I'm assuming that's what you were talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, you really brought up a great thing, and that's not everyone notices that is the placement of the character on the page. So I just want to go back to that really quick.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
really you picked that up on that because that was carefully orchestrated, in terms
Okay.
of the scale of him where he is and the eye movement of the child as they read a book page to page. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a really
No, I
important
mean,
thing.
I'm glad I noticed something important, but it was just magical to me. I thought, wow. So I can't
Yeah.
wait to get. I'm going to see my grandbabies next week, and I'm going to take those books, both of those Wolf Bowl, and read it to them because that's one of the things we do together. I've, bought them Kisses from Space, and I definitely will be giving these two. So I'm excited. That one particularly, I think they're going to love it. But anyway,
Good.
sorry.
That
Find the
makes
sun.
me
Yeah,
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 but like yes, I've learned over time that sometimes these little ideas or visuals will just pop in your head. I really think that happens to everybody. I may be wrong, but I think everyone like, yeah, but even if you don't draw it or paint it down, I think you can, like, let's say someone is telling you a story of what happened at work, like, someone and you kind of are picturing it. We all have
sure.
this kind of mental image in our head. So I've learned to really lean into whatever that initial image is in my head that comes up. That's usually the truth. I call it the truth
Okay.
in my
Hmm.
brain.
Yeah.
For some reason that one morning I woke up. This was not long after my father passed away, actually, and I think I was at his house still, and I woke up and I had this dream right before I woke up, and all it was an image. It was just this rabbit outside of a little boy's window, and I drew it. I drew it when I woke up, and it just sat there for a couple years. I didn't really know what to do with it. And then, my kids are getting older, 2 boys, one's 10, one's 16, and Eddie, the youngest, I had already written a book about Ben, who's older now, years ago, and Eddie said, "Dad, are you gonna ever do a book about me?" And I said, "Do you want me to do one?" He goes, "Yes." And I said, "Okay." And I thought about it, and that image came back to mind and that connection, and my son Eddie, he's just a special, special kid. He's so smart, like, off the charts smart, and he loves playing piano, and he can remember everything, and he's just such a brilliant child. He struggles with social interactions and fear, especially at school. One of his biggest fears is if a kid next to him is saying something and getting in trouble, that the teacher will think it's him somehow, like getting caught up in the chaos of that kind of
Yeah.
thing, to the point where he
Yeah.
would have panic attacks before he went to school. And he's a little
Oh,
bit better now, but it was little things that I took for granted as a kid were really difficult for him to walk through. He still wears In the original illustrations, I wanted Eddie to wear a hoodie because my son Eddie still wears a hoodie. He just hides kind of a little bit in the hoodie. It's still a 10. And
yeah.
so this book is to me, the rabbit in it is, and whoever reads this book, you'll see the rabbit is a guide for Eddie. And no one really sees this rabbit except for Eddie. That's it. But for
Oh,
me, it's my dad, but also it's very much my wife, who I think is truly the rabbit for Eddie. I tend to, as a parent, I'm more worried about him getting hurt and feelings hurt and how is he going to survive this. My wife is like, he's got to learn. You got to get him out there. He just has to learn. And she's right. Every time I always look back, I'm like, wow, you're so much braver than me. So
well,
she's the rabbit. And that's kind of where it comes from. I just, as an artist, what I try to do is I find these little like gifts or wherever they're coming from, little messages or whatever. And I kind of begin to weave them together. And that became what this book is.
that is absolutely lovely. I bet he already treasures that. But boy, when he grows up, that is like, I'm going to start crying. That is, wow, that is going to make all the difference. And the fact that it says to him, I really am about to start crying, Andy, that you see him as a parent. And that is lovely. What a lovely gift you've given your son by doing that. It really moves me because when
Thank
you
you.
think about it, that's all that we want is to be seen and to be known. And by doing that book, that's what you've said to him, to your wife, to your dad, but to so many people. You said, I see you. And I'm going to honor that and put that down in words and in beautiful illustrations. So that's lovely. I'm so glad. Now, this book, it is not out yet. Tell us when it comes out. I know it's not too far away.
Uh-huh. That's a good question. Caught me off guard. Well, here it is. Here's the book.
Uh, look, so
Let me
lovely.
see.
I look at it
They
now.
might have to look up on Amazon right now to find the actual date. I think,
Yeah. I think
I
it's the
think it's
1st of May, isn't that May 6th or something like that?
yes,
When I
you're
looked it
right.
up. I'm gonna help you.
May 6th. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like, when we start these things, it's usually a couple of years beforehand, and then
Yes,
suddenly the
yes.
date's here. Uh,
I'm finishing a book right now, and it's been in my brain forever, and so I'm like, "Oh, when will it be out?" There's still 6 months, I'm sure, from being out, but
Do
we're
you do
doing that.
children's books as well? You write children's
Well,
books?
I actually write parenting books, but I do have I have these children's books that have been on my heart for years that I have written somewhat. I just haven't taken the step to move into children's books, but I write
Yeah.
parenting books. Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, with your background and knowledge, I mean, you could really do something
Yeah.
special.
I love the idea and real children's books. I've got 10 kids, and so we have read a lot of children's books over the years. And I am a sucker for a children's book. I will buy it from the person next door who made it on Amazon, and I'll buy it for whoever, the best artist. One of my favorites recently is Yellow Bus. Have you seen that book?
And
Yellow Bus. You'll have to look that up because it reminded me of you with your clay. This guy built a whole town of where this bus would go, and he built it real life 3D and then filmed it and shot it and then drew it mostly, I think, in pencil or charcoal. I'm going to get the tools wrong, but anyway, it's spectacular. You would probably really enjoy it. So I'd love to talk more about Disney. Just go back to Disney for a little bit because I'd love to know, what did you learn from doing that? You're not with Disney now, but 25 years, that's a really long time and a lot of projects. And so many of our parents listening, their parents have young children, so they've probably seen everything you've worked on multiple times. Just as a person, how did that impact you as an artist, as a dad?
Mm.
I'd love to
Oh,
hear a
God.
little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been such a huge part of my life. I'm still in animation. I just work with a different company now, but still doing
Okay.
animated movies. But
Okay.
but yeah, the goal. I went to art school really with the goal of being the children's book illustrator. That was the whole
Right.
thing.
Okay.
But one day, Disney came up to the school. A guy named Bill Matthews. He's no longer with us, but he used to tour around the country and talk to kids and students in college and recruit and talk about that kind of stuff. He came, and almost didn't go to this presentation. I just wasn't at the time really interested in it. I just was so caught up in the children's books and doing oil painting.
Mhm.
I thought, well, I'll just go. I'll just go and check it out. They showed the two things. One, they showed an early um, sequence of The Lion King, the opening sequence with the huge song all the way to where they
Yes.
put the lion up. And then they showed, and some of the images were done, some were in storyboard format, some were just drawn animation. I was like, what is this? This is interesting. And then they showed a very, very early animation pass of Pocahontas. Glenn Keane was the animator, and he's one of the greats. He
Great
learned from the
movie.
nine
Yeah.
old men at Disney years ago, and he's
Wow.
retired now, but just unbelievable talent. And there was that spark again. It just kind of happened right then, and
I
then
love that.
suddenly everything went this way toward that.
Okay.
And I kind of went with it thinking eventually I'll do kids books. That'll happen. About 2 years after that, I landed an internship at Disney, and at that time they were ramping up for Lion King to really finish up Lion
Mhm.
King. They were hiring. They had 4 internships of 17 people each, and there were thousands and thousands of portfolios being sent in. Everyone from every school was trying to get into this thing, and somehow I got this. This is my 21st birthday. I got the internship. And I did okay during that internship, and I got hired shortly after. So I did work on Lion King. I drew one leaf on it. That's it. That's all I got to do.
But you were in the credits maybe.
The credits. But it was great. It was great. And then on let's see, Hunchback of Notre Dame, I was in the cleanup animation department. So cleanup animation, 24 drawings a second. It is mind-numbingly slow, but you learn so much about discipline and working with the team and everything. And everything about that, going to the wrap party at the end and with my family, and that feeling of accomplishment of seeing a movie all the way through.
Yes.
There was not long after that, I was walking down. This is a long story, so be prepared.
I'm ready. I'm
Yeah,
loving this. Keep going.
it was Mulan was in the beginning process of being developed at that time, and I
Love
was
Mulan.
I was always the first one in the building, the last one to leave. I just was really wanting to really prove myself at that time. And an office open with a light on. I walked in, and the walls were covered in these beautiful color paintings. We call them color keys, and it's like a little tiny paintings about this big, and they represent the main scenes in the movie all the way through. And you can see how the color flows from the opening to the closing of the film, and how that color relates to emotions and everything else. And I mean, again, there was the spark, and I just was like, that's what I want to do. That's exactly, I don't know what this is, it's what I want to do. And kind of set a 10-year course for being an art director is what I wanted to go. That's my goal. And during that time, I met the art director. I talked with him. He began to mentor me. I was in the layout department now. That was my day job, was the layout department. That's the cinematography. We draw the backgrounds of everything.
Okay.
We don't paint. We just work out camera moves, cinematography.
Interesting. Okay.
And I learned so much. That help me a lot in the future. And another movie was upcoming, a movie called My Peoples. Dolly Parton was doing the music for it, and
I don't know
Rick
that.
Sluter, who was the art director, said, "If you, I'm going to put your name forward for production designer if you want to go for this." And I was terrified, but yeah. A week later, the studio shut down. It closed, and this was in Florida, and everyone had a few months to find work somewhere else. And at that time, it was just Disney, and DreamWorks was just starting up. There was nothing else. But I did get a call from Sony Animation, and they were starting up a studio in California, and they were looking for an art director. And they asked me how much experience I had. I had none, but I said, "Well, I've been working for 10 years towards it. And I'm really ready for this thing." And I got through the movie, but it was trial by fire, and I survived it. I learned so much. And that movie was called Open Season. That was it
Yep,
at
I
Sony.
know that movie, yeah.
And then after that, I went back to Disney, and I just worked on a slew of movies from Bolt, Tangled. I was one of the production designers on Wreck-It Ralph, art director, production designer on Moana, and a bunch of different shorts. And so it's been a journey. The whole time, though, I've been trying to make the books, and it started again in 2016. I finally had my first book come out called Bug Zoo.
Yes, right, I saw that. I haven't seen the actual book, but I did look that and see, so I was gonna ask you if that was your first one
That was the
because
first one.
Wolf Boy was what, 2020, 2021? When did you
Uh-huh.
do that one?
Yep,
Yeah,
21. Yep. And
that's so now you feel like all of that led you I mean, are you glad now looking back that you had that time to kind of develop your skill before you wrote the children's books, or can you see that that was helpful in the children's books?
100%. And actually, the process of making an animated movie is very much like making a children's book. It's just that the children's book is so much smaller. It's so much more condensed into like schedule, the pipeline, and the people working on it. But I did learn a lot about how to work with different people and how to take feedback as an artist. Sometimes, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of artists out there that are really, really good with feedback and stuff. I always had a very hard time with feedback because I thought, this is my art. I don't want notes on
Yeah.
that's the business. And I have very thick skin now, but that prepared me for the book industry, which can be even tougher with those
Yes,
notes.
probably why I've never done it. I'm terrified.
It's believe me, I've had a lot of rejections before the first one went. For sure.
Yeah. So did you think you would write the books and illustrate them? Because you do both. You're now writing the words and illustrating. Was that your dream, or was your dream originally more illustration and you've just happened into the words too? Or how did that
It
come
was
about?
always it was always both, but there was a little bit of humbling to do there with the Bug Zoo was a really good learning experience for me. I tried for 3 years to write that story while the publisher patiently waited. You know, they didn't give it a release date for it. They just were waiting for that book to develop. They liked the idea of it. And I couldn't do it. I just could not get the words right. And
Yeah.
I speak through illustration. And finally, the publisher said, what do you think if we just hire a writer to write it? It's your idea, everything like that, but she writes the words and then you do the illustration. Well, she did it overnight. And it was like, wow, that's what a professional can do. And it really was a good learning experience for me. I mean, I went back and number one, I started reading a lot more, like really reading middle grade school books, but also tons of children's books and poetry and things.
Yes.
And then writing and writing and writing and writing every single day. And so it was like trying to learn something that was not really my skill at all. But I found in the process that, and I think this comes from my dad, I have kind of a very sassy sense of humor
Love that.
and
Same.
and it comes up. It's not like I write these things down and say, it just comes up in conversation when I'm talking with people. But I found that when I was writing the ideas for Wolf Boy, I was saying the ideas out loud. I was holding my son at that time, Eddie was only like a little baby, like 6 months, 8 months old. And I was trying to tell him the story. And first I tried to tell him like how I thought it was supposed to be. And he was he was not interested at all, especially that age. But when I started saying, rabbits, rabbits, where are you? He would, even at that age, his eyes got big. I'm like, that's
Yes.
interesting. It's really
Right.
interesting. So I was using kind of a good test audience for that.
That's fabulous.
And how to make the words feel more inclusive so the reader feels like it's worth reading those words and it really pulls them into the story rather than it just being on the page somewhere.
That's right. I think that's what it does. I mean, just what I've read of your work, it does pull you in. That story, I mean, your choice of words are fabulous in that too, because they're short and they're snappy. And I think that's powerful for young kids. I think about my kids' favorite books, honestly, are the ones that either tugged at their heart even as a little kid, or the short, snappy ones. They love the funny, quick, quick-witted ones. Did you have a favorite children's book that you remember?
Yes, Where the Wild Things Are, Maurice Sendak.
Not
And
surprising.
yeah,
That's a good one.
it's I think it's like almost everybody's. But what's interesting in readings that I've done at schools in the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of kids don't know that book. It's which is fascinating to me.
It's gone
Just
away, huh?
it's gone away a little bit. It was such a part of the culture in the '70s and '80s.
Mhm. For sure.
He knew, and one thing I learned from watching documentaries on him, he understood that you write to the children's brain, not to the adult's brain. That's and don't ever assume that they're children really, because they're thinking on a much higher level than most people think. And so those books are really written. It's like a secret message to the reader. And I try to
Yeah.
remember that. There are a lot of different types of books out there, and all of them have really good morals. I try to keep the moral very, very subtle so that the kid doesn't think ever they're being lectured. It's just there, sprinkled in, but very carefully put. And I learned that from Maurice Sendak.
I
Books.
love that. That's fabulous. What advice would you give to parents if they see their child is just drawn to art? Again, I'm teaching them when I teach parents, I'm saying you just have all different materials available and you let them, it's not at this age. Now, again, I'm talking those early under 7 years. It is process based, it is open ended, it is unstructured. It is not, we're trying to draw the bird. It is you give them great materials and let them create. That's what I say. What would you say?
Oh gosh, kids are just so creative and they find ways. I used to draw with rocks on the concrete, on the sidewalk
I
outside.
love that.
And,
Yeah.
like, arrange sticks and berries and things to make little illustrations in the grass. I think that just giving them that space and seeing what they want. I've made the mistake before of, like, seeing a little bit like my son could draw, and I went out and bought all the paints and everything for him, and he never touched it. He never touched it, you know? My parents kind of I think what they did do right is they kind of watched from afar, They were really as far as I was concerned, they were not in my business, but they really loved what I was doing. They stayed, but they were excited, talking to them later, they were excited about it. But I always felt that I was kind of it was my thing, and I was kind of leading the charge, and I had the freedom to do what I wanted. And if I wanted a pencil, I'd ask for it, or if I wanted paints, can I have that for my birthday? And they whether they did that on purpose or not, they did it right, and for me, at least,
Yes, right.
and I really felt like I owned it. There was never pressure to enter competitions or things like that. But I
I
wanted to.
love that.
I
Yes.
really just wanted to, because it was mine. I loved it.
I love that too, and it does sound like your parents got it right because, again, that's what we say is, like, our job as the parent is really we're the facilitator, we're the supporters. We aren't supposed to step into that deep play, and, art is your play. I mean, that's what from a young age, it sounds like it still is, which is beautiful. I mean, I love the fact that you get to have a career that is so playful and, what you discovered as a young boy, you still get to do as a man.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like that
Yeah.
too. I really
Yeah.
don't feel completely and I don't know if you have something like this in your life where I completely forget how old I am when I'm doing it. Yeah, 8 years old eternally when I'm painting and drawing. And then I put it down and, like, look in the mirror like, "Okay, yeah, I'm 53."
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand that part, the second half more, sadly. I love that. So back to Find the Sun, that book is coming out. Where can they find it? Where can they follow you to learn more about your other books and your work?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Andy Harkness Art, and recently I've been posting a lot of old Disney stuff through the
I
years.
saw that.
But I
I saw
also
your Mulan, and I didn't. I'm glad you explained it because I saw you talked about the red and the Mulan, and then you did Lilo and Stitch, which is fabulous, and the blues, and I was like, I really don't know what that means, but so I'm so glad you explained it because oh, that makes sense. But it was stunning. Those things were stunning.
thank
So
you.
yeah,
Thank you. And I will be, as we get in, I'm going to start the process of this. Bug Zoo and Wolf Boy were made out of clay, and
yes.
then what I was mentioning earlier is that I got a little bored of a certain thing for too long. I started getting into VR sculpting, so it's like digital clay sculpting. So
What
I'm in a virtual environment building these things, and I can scale them up to where I'm as big as Eddie on the cloud and look around. And yes,
are you
it's
kidding? I didn't even know that was a thing, Andy. Stop it. That sounds crazy.
it is crazy. I'll be posting some of it soon, some of the process.
So that, yeah, that's how you did that. The whole Find the Sun.
Yep, yep.
Wow.
And then, so if you wanna learn more about that in the process, I'll be posting stuff on Instagram. And then for the book, it's going to be, you can get it on Amazon. It'll be in Barnes and Noble and Target. And, it's a lot easier. I love going into libraries and reading too, and seeing where they're at in libraries, but it should be
Oh,
pretty widespread. Bloomsbury is the publisher, and they usually
super.
do a really good job of coverage on these.
And I do know you can pre-order it, like I said, because 'cause I've already pre-ordered mine on Amazon, so I'll be excited to get that when it comes out in May. You are delight. Carrie Vosick, thank you, because she said that. She like, "You're gonna love him. He is precious." Before we close, I always ask my guests about their own favorite childhood memory, because I just those stories melt me. As you can tell, I'm a softie for a story of childhood. So do you have a favorite childhood memory that comes to mind that you'd be willing to share?
Yes, and I'm trying so hard to figure out how to make this into a book. But anyway, the when I was about 6 years old, that magic age, like 5, 6, where you didn't believe, I did. I believed in everything. It was
Yes.
still very much attached to that magical world in my head.
Yep. Just
My older
wonder
s
everywhere.
is wonder everywhere. I was having trouble at school. I was being bullied, and I was very kind of, like, isolated, and I was scared to go to school too as a kid and all that stuff, and my older sister, Hillary, who's always been kind of my protector, she just decided she was gonna do something very special for me, and I didn't know what she was gonna do, but she left me a little note with a lollipop, and it was in a place where I was gonna find it, so I found it, and I read it, and it was from an elf. An elf had left me a note, and he was gonna be my special friend and leave me this lollipop, and over the course of a month, she did these little things here and there, and I didn't wanna tell anybody about it. I didn't wanna tell my parents, secret. That thing was a secret, and I remember at one point going into her room, and I saw her, and she was making the notes, and it was so heartbreaking, and so that's the sad part of the story, but as an adult, I know, like, how special that was. Like, I really, really believed in that, and part of me still wants it to be true. So I think that's I've had a few of those little moments, throughout my childhood, but that's one that keeps coming
I love
back.
that. And you're right, I had a visual while you were telling me that
There you
story.
go.
So you were correct. I visualized that along with you but I didn't think you were gonna be sad. I thought you were gonna find her and you were gonna be so excited that it was your sister. So that was a
I know.
surprise. So there you go.
I wanted to believe it so bad. Yeah.
But how sweet. What a sweet sister to do that for you and look out for you in that way. Well, you are, I mean, gifted. I don't even know if that's a strong enough word, but wow, magical. Your stuff is magical. And I cannot wait to read this new book and share it with my grandbabies. I think that's going to be delightful. So thank you for touching our world the way you do and making it better and brighter and moving us with your gift. It has been such a joy to talk to you. Thanks for
Thank you
being here,
so much
Andy.
for having me. I've enjoyed every minute of this. I really have.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.